What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the debut album by rapper 2 Chainz. Basically, this project is called Based on a True Story, and it came out in the summer of 2012. Now, 2 Chainz had a pretty large mixtape run throughout 2011 and 2012 and stuff. Prior to that, he was a part of the rap group Players Circle with Dollar Boy, which I reviewed one of their albums earlier this year back in March, and that's a pretty classic album, I would have to say. The 2007 album by Players Circle, I think it was called Supply and Demand. That's definitely one you should check out. It has hits on there like Duffel Bag Boy and some stuff like that. But basically, after that, Players Circle dropped another album in 2009, and then 2 Chainz went solo. His prior name to 2 Chainz was Titty Boy, and he switched it in 2011 to 2 Chainz to have more of like a family friendly kind of presentable name as far as that kind of went. But his string of appearances throughout 2011 and early 2012 really helped catalog some things. His string of hits, his string of guest appearances in 2011 and 2012 helped catalog things. He was on Kanye West and Good Music's Mercy back in 2012, and then he was also on Bees in the Trap by Nicki Minaj in early 2012. So he was starting to make a name, starting to get a little bit more headway than he had in Players Circle, or at least more kind of solo type stuff as far as that kind of went. He was starting to become like, I mean, his lyricism was improving. 2 Chainz' lyricism was becoming more commercial as far as that kind of went. I mean, he was good back in the day on like Duffel Bag Boy and some of those type moments, but it was starting to become more commercial, where it was starting to be in the rap charts and those type things. And it was just a lot more vivid. It was just kind of a surprise that 2 Chainz just out of nowhere just became like a pretty much household name in rap music from like 2012 forward. It was just interesting because prior to 2012, he was basically just the Players Circle cat as far as that kind of went, with songs like Duffel Bag Boy. But by the time you got to like August and November of 2012, he was kind of like household name territory as far as being like one of the headliners in rap music, kind of in between Juicy J and Kanye West and Lil Wayne and some of those type folks from around that time. It was just interesting that that had happened just that immediately and suddenly as far as that kind of went. It was interesting. And kind of the thing about it is, 2 Chainz was a part of the mixtape run of like the early 2010s as far as some stuff like that kind of went. There's definitely some good appearances. I want to say that there's some mixtape songs on this particular album that were kind of on like his 2011 mixtape True Religion or something like that. I want to say that maybe Riot was on there. I'm definitely going to review True Religion down the road, but I would have to say it was just interesting. There were definitely some folks. Future was on his mixtape grind back then. Rocco, Gucci Mane, whole bunch of folks. Waka Flocka Flame, bunch of folks out of Atlanta and stuff like that. This was some good vibes to kind of get. And this kind of like I was saying, this is kind of a surprise, just how it just kind of came out of nowhere and just was on the scene and just was like a front runner. But then also, the thing about rap music in 2012 was it was kind of starting to shift away from like swag rap and more dirty South type hip hop as far as that kind of went, where things like, I mean, Rick Ross started to enter drill, and he was starting to change into more sophistication and get more album quality down. But then prior stuff like ringtone rap and Southern cats like Young Jock and like Dem Franchise Boys and things like that, Rocco and some of those folks were kind of starting to phase out, and it was being replaced with like a more established Gucci Mane and folks like Future and some of that type of stuff. So swag rap was kind of starting to phase out. But it's just interesting because this is a hit album. It's kind of like a melded kind of version of like what Southern hip hop was kind of on in 2012, because there weren't a ton of cats in the South that were kind of dropping around this time. Rick Ross was kind of on more sophisticated album quality with albums like God Forgives, I Don't, and there were just less folks that were kind of doing that. Waka Flocka put out like his last album that he was going to put out, or Waka Flocka, started to become more commercial. So it's this kind of thing. So this is kind of interesting just because this album is kind of interesting just because it's kind of in like the mixtape era, but it's also kind of fleshed out versions of how that sort of stuff kind of happened. This is a pretty good, solid album. It has some commercial bite on this particular project, and it definitely has some good singles on here. 2 Chainz got to the third single despite the fact that he was just more of like a mixtape rapper and kind of group rapper just a year prior as far as that kind of went. But it's just interesting kind of get some of that because the 2012, there just were some shifting of the tides in 2012. There's some things that started to happen, like Odd Future was starting to blow up, Chief Keef was starting to blow up, some things like that. Kanye West was changing, Drake was blowing up, just things like that were kind of starting to happen. So it's just interesting seeing what was going on with Southern hip hop. But this is a pretty hit album. It's definitely going to get a rather rave score, I would have to say. It's just the quality of what was kind of going around that time. So I just would have to say There's three particular singles on this album. The first single is No Lie. This has Drake on there. He helps with the hook and he drops the verse also. So this is kind of like a glistening kind of night venue hit, I would have to say. This is a commercial ratchet single, I would have to say, and it's just a good change of pace for 2012 as far as that kind of happened. It's a pretty litty song. So this is kind of something that was kind of more R and bass and ratchet type music as that was starting to happen. The DJ Mustard type sound that was kind of around in like the early mid 2010s as far as that kind of went. 2 Chainz was one of the flagship ones of ratchet music as far as that kind of went. Juicy J and Tyga and some folks like that were kind of doing it, but this is pretty commercial single, definitely one that stands out of 2012 when it comes to rap music. This is probably one of the bigger songs of that particular year. It's just a good highlight, just great little kind of like glistening type night venue song that just has a lot of energy that carries over well. So that's a definite nice one. The second single is Birthday Song, and this has Kanye West on there, and this is another highlight. This is like a good kind of seldom seen 2 Chainz hit, I would have to say. It has lots of riveting pizzazz about it, and it's just a solid EDM-like heaviness that it has. So this is definitely like an electronic one in like a mild sense or a decent sense, I would have to say. It's a real kind of riveting type song. This one's a little bit more turned up than No Lie. I would definitely say this is a pretty riveting kind of one that just has a lot of good, fascinating kind of energy that just works pretty heavily. I just would have to say it's a pretty nice feel that it has. Definitely like the energy that's carried on this particular song, and Kanye fits this song pretty well. This is like a power hungry kind of song, and Kanye definitely fits a song like this. This works extremely well. This has a good topic as far as that kind of goes. Just wanting a big booty bitch for your birthday as far as that kind of happens. It's a good kind of vibe to kind of have. And the third single is I'm Different. I definitely like this song too. This is probably one of my more favorite 2 Chainz songs for the longest time. Definitely like this one. This is like a more crunchy, I'm Different is a more crunchy night out hit, I would have to say. It's a loud pack for like a gleaming time. This song is like a loud pack for a gleaming time, I would have to say, and it's just got a charismatic groove and jive about it. So this is definitely one. I really like the beat on here. It just works as a DJ Mustard beat. It's a pretty slinky one that just hits pretty heavily. It's definitely one. This one's not quite as energetic as Birthday Song, but it definitely has like some good kind of real festive, definite good smoke session, just kind of turned up in a pretty solid sense in a nightclub as far as that kind of happens. This one's a little bit more lively than No Lie, but all three of these songs just work for some excellent kind of times out as far as that kind of happens. These are just real litty, especially for 2012 as far as that kind of happened. These are just some nice ones. So there were a bunch of other promotional singles on here. There were some songs that got some music videos for them, like I Love Them Strippers, Crack, Yuck, and then Like Me were some ones that kind of had some music videos. I'm just going to talk about these more ones that I'm just going to talk about the songs that I recommend, but I would definitely have to say that this kind of had some decent promotion about it. This album was kind of a big deal back in 2012. Like I was saying, 2 Chainz was like the, not necessarily rookie, but just like the one to watch in 2012. He definitely had that particular vibe that he was going to have probably one of the better albums of like 2012 in terms of rap music. I'd have to say this is a pretty like hyped one for the time for what it was. That's a good concept about it. But yeah, I would have to say, talk about the songs I recommend. So I'm reviewing the deluxe edition, and there's 17 songs on there, and out of those 17 songs I wound up recommending 12 and a half. So basically the almost song is Stop Me Now, but I'm going to go ahead and recommend the 12 songs I recommend. So the 12 songs would be No Lie, I'm Different, Crack, Extremely Blessed, I Love Them Strippers, In Town, Countdown, Like Me, Riot, What We Doin', Birthday Song, and I Feel Good. And then once again, the almost song is Stop Me Now. So I just would have to say, to talk about Stop Me Now, this is kind of like a Stop Me Now is kind of like a Blue Blood, kind of fancier sophistication and reflective tune, I would have to say. It's a Smoke a Few. This is a Smoke a Few cut, definitely, and it's a very soulful song, but I feel like the beat is a little bit spare. I mean, I kind of like it, but it's not, I kind of like the beat on this particular song, but it's not one of my favorite soulful beats. I mean, it's good, but it's not like super superb as far as that kind of happens. It's just kind of like, 6.5, 7 out of 10 territory. It just has like, it's just a pretty, regular, just kind of vanilla, kind of soulful kind of beat on there. It's definitely a good song to smoke to, but there are like Rick Ross is pretty good at doing this. I'm probably spoiled on him or folks like that as far as that kind of happens. But I do want to say that Play a Circle has done some soulful hits. Like there's one like that, like You Can Believe It off of like Supply and Demand. That was pretty good. That was definitely a nice one that had Ludacris on there, but that's just kind of the concept. So talk about some of the highlights on here, like I Love Them Strippers with Nicki Minaj is a pretty highlighted one. This is definitely like a nice night out, kind of strip club and evening flash, I would have to say. This is kind of a nice night out and strip club and evening flash, I would have to say. It's just a good southern hit, and it has some biting lyrics on here. So Nicki and 2 Chainz do a pretty good job with this particular song. Definitely like the production on this one. This is just a vivid kind of, this is another accompaniment to like songs like I'm Different and Birthday Song. It's kind of some vivid times as far as that kind of happens. Just a definite nice ode to strippers and strip clubs as far as that kind of happens. It's a good one to kind of have to kind of get things in motion as far as that kind of goes. I would say that Countdown is a really nice makeshift kind of song. This is kind of like a pseudo makeshift song, but I do like the meshing of how 2 Chainz did with this one. This is a good meshing of 2 Chainz with like 2012 EDM craze that kind of happens. It's a good meshing of 2 Chainz with 2012 EDM craze, I'd have to say. Chris Brown enhances this song pretty well, and it's just a nice commercial gem. This one's kind of makeshift. It's kind of a simmering type song where it's kind of some EDM craze, but not quite as hype as like EDM full blown kind of gets. But I do like the fact that 2 Chainz was able to amalgamate this song and just be able to do it pretty well. This is a nice one. Kind of a makeshift kind of tune just to kind of have for like work after hours, like 4:30, 5:30 p.m., something like that. And then Like Me is another nice one. This kind of has a weekend sample on here. Definitely like this song. This is like a stellar kind of hazy R&B type vibes with like a weekend sample on there. Definitely works for like late day commerce malaise, I would have to say. And it's pretty recreational. So this is one, despite the fact that it has like that commerce malaise about it, I would still say that it's still intended for having some times like getting ready to step out. Just to say that this song is recreational. This works for like the 6:37 p.m. haze of getting ready to step out as far as that kind of happens. So that's a nice one. Like a particularly good mixtape cut on this particular album would be Riot. This is like a stellar kind of early 2010s vintage trap cut, I would have to say. It has a more rugged and raw. This song has a more rugged and raw mixtape type feel about it, and it's just a blissful kind of pounder, I would have to say. So I definitely like this one. This has a lot of good energy. Yeah, Riot just works as like a highlighted kind of mixtape cut. If you do miss like the mixtape vibes of 2010, 2011, some stuff that like Future or Yo Gotti would do, some of that type of stuff, Riot's just a good one. Just has a really kind of piano type beat that just works pretty damn well. And then another good mixtape on here would be Crack. This is a good heavy trap beat, and it's one of the album's best productions, I would have to say. It's a vintage kind of early 2010s trap beat, and I definitely think it reminds me of Future and Yo Gotti. So this is just an overall excellent one. Glad that 2 Chainz kept some of that mixtape grind on here. It's just a refreshing one to kind of have for that sort of sense. This kind of works as like a rugged kind of one. This just works as like a rugged kind of one. Just kind of like a mixtape heavy type one that has a lot of good edge about it. Just a nice one to highlight to kind of have on here. It's one that brings it back to like the mixtape grind. Definitely a good one. And then a pretty good R&B tune on here. This is one that I've liked by 2 Chainz for quite a while. This is just an overall nice one. Really has a great hook on here. Has a really good hook on here, and this is extremely blessed with like the dream. This is like a good syrupy. This is like a good syrupy, dense, luxurious ladies gem, I would have to say. The dream has some great smooth vocals on here, and it's just an easy kind of vibe. This is definitely like a summery kind of malaise type one that just works for like some sunsets and things like that. Just kick back and just good ladies tune for like some good kick back as far as that kind of happens. Just good mellow kind of vibes and just overall smooth smooth kind of vocals as far as that kind of happens. 2 Chainz does a good job with this. This kind of commercial kind of R&B kind of R&B type fare as far as that kind of happens. Just works in that sort of sense as far as getting some of that. This would have to say, or not R&B, but just kind of, well, yeah, this rhythm and bass, this kind of R&B hip hop type tune that just has some good smooth vocals as far as that kind of happens. So I just would have to say another one that's kind of similar to that would be In Town with Mike Posner. And this is like a sunset-like smooth touchdown tune, I would have to say. It's got some R&R kickback and refined vibe for like some graceful outings, I would have to say. And it's just an overall vibe, definitely. This is another kind of summer malaise type one that just works pretty well. Just some good kickback, just some good kickback in the sense of like some ladies tunes as far as that kind of happens. This is like a more refined one, just kind of if you're traveling a lot and you visit women in other towns as far as that kind of happens. It's a good concept as far as vacation and getting that sort of kickback. Just works in a good extreme sense. It's like the concept of a highlighted kind of R&B tune that just works like that. And Mike Posner has a pretty smooth hook on here, so it's a good one. He's not someone that always gets hit up when it comes to albums, so it's a pretty good one. This would have to say What We Doing is another good mixtape highlight, like Riot and Crack. I would have to say this is a good in the cut kind of trap beat. I would have to say it's got a nice Mike Will. It's a nice Mike Will made it kind of follow up, so he did a pretty good job. I think he did either Crack or Riot, one of those two ones, but I would have to say it's definitely a pretty good beat. This one's definitely kind of more of like an album cut kind of one, more so than a single, but it's definitely a good one to kind of have. This is another one that chock's full of the album, just as far as doing it, just kind of having another highlight on here. This is just like a night out song with like some bustle about it. So this is kind of like a mixtape kind of grind cut as far as that kind of goes, but it's also kind of a solid night venue kind of song, just in a more vanilla sense and just kind of plainer sense, not quite as riveting as like I'm Different or I Love Them Strippers or Riot or Birthday Song or some of those type ones, but it's definitely like a vanilla one to kind of have for just like a mixtape kind of outing kind of song, I would have to say. So it's a nice one. And then I Feel Good is a retro kind of song. Definitely like this one. This is like a stock and vintage kind of Don Cannon 2000s era mixtape feel, I would have to say. It's an out on the town kind of with pep, and this is an out on the town with pep and drive kind of feel about it. And this is just kind of one that just has some good ambience about it, just good energy to kind of have, where you're just kind of typical kind of 2000s era mixtape type feel as far as that kind of happens, but just with some pep as far as wanting to go out and just have a good vivid time as far as that kind of happens. Definitely like the feel of this particular one. Yeah, it's just an overall highlight. So me recommending 12 and a half songs out of 17 on this particular album. I'm going to go ahead and give this album like an 8.75 out of 10. I feel like that's extremely good. There's a small handful of songs I didn't recommend. Like some of these ones like Yuck and Don't. There's some songs on here that kind of have some poor productions and just kind of struggle overall to kind of have the engagement factor and just overall connectability that they kind of need and stuff. I'd have to say songs like Yuck and Dope Peddler just have some really poor productions that just don't really stand up to the rest of the album as far as that kind of happens. I kind of felt like Money Machine was kind of like a poor night out kind of song. I kind of felt like Money Machine was kind of like a poor night out kind of song. This is like the only real blunder when it came to like the more nightlife type stuff as far as songs like I Love Them Strippers and No Lie and I'm Different, some of those type ones. That was just a poor one. Money Machine just didn't really have for the most part, it was just kind of a kind of factory and phone sent in kind of beat as far as that kind of went. And then Ghetto Dreams is just kind of a poor one. It's too bad that was kind of a waste of a Scarface feature and a John Legend hook, I would have to say. That one just didn't really equal what I was probably expecting it to. That one was just kind of a more homely cut that just didn't nail it. Ghetto Dreams just didn't nail it probably as well as I would have wanted it to. So that's kind of the concept. But to basically say, yeah, 8.75 out of 10. It's just kind of the concept about it. Just a few small blunders for the most part. I pretty much just feel like the vast majority of this album is top notch. It has a bunch of riveting energy, a bunch of good stepping out type feels, great singles. Definitely all three of the singles are excellent. All three of the singles are excellent and showcase 2 Chainz greatly. It was definitely a good look for him in 2012 as far as that kind of went. Just some great nightlife and overall exuberant kind of times as far as that kind of goes. And 2 Chainz is a pretty good lyricist. Definitely to kind of say he's in like Lil Wayne's realm as far as that kind of happens. He's definitely a premier lyricist. I don't know if he's always talked about, and especially for a Southern cat, the South kind of gets a lot of flack when it comes to lyricism, but he can keep up with folks like Lil Wayne and other folks like that. There's some other ones I can't think of. Like, he can be on the song with Kendrick Lamar and Kanye West and Lil Wayne and folks like that. He can keep up with some of them. So he does have some good bars on here. And I believe, to my knowledge, I want to say that he freestyles. He's kind of like Lil Wayne where he doesn't write down his lyrics. I mean, it's not like he never writes down his lyrics, but I want to say that he freestyles enough of these. So some of this cleverness that you hear on this album is actually him just off the dome and stuff. So that's some good concepts. So I just would have to say, so 8.75. The social score, I'm going to give it 10 out of 10 because there's just so many vivid highlights on here. There's just a chock full of great nightlife and outings, and there's even some makeshift on here and some stuff like that. Just factory kind of, maybe not chock full of blue collar, but enough to kind of say that just the appreciation of just having a day-to-day and that type of stuff, or just things of that nature. Good nightlife, good day life, just some mixtape cuts on here that bring back some of those mixtape vibes from 2010, 2011, just some of that type of stuff. Some Mike Will made it beats, some folks like that, Southside, some of those type folks that are on here, just some good stuff to kind of have. Definitely works in that sense. Just a real kind of basically mixtape album, just like that commercial sheen, and then it has some good hooks. There's definitely some good R&B hooks on here. Mike Posner, The Dream, Drake, some of those type folks. So it has some commercial sheen, some edginess, just a good overall amalgamation of an album, I would have to say. So in terms of the future, like 2 Chainz just dropped a collaboration album with Lil Wayne last month, which was College Grove 2 or Welcome to College Grove. That's the newest one in that iteration, I would have to say. So it's a good concept. I reviewed the first one. I'm eventually going to get to that one. But 2 Chainz has a bunch of albums. I'm eventually going to review 2 Chainz Boats 2 Me Time from 2013. That's definitely one I want to get to as far as that kind of happens. But this is an excellent album here and definitely worth checking out, and definitely a highlight in rap music from 2012.